All right. Gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Clyde, is recognized.
Thank you, Chairman Connolly and Ranking Member Heiss, for holding this very important hearing today. Part of this committee's mission is to look for and prevent government waste, fraud, and abuse. And today we are finally holding a hearing that is highlighting the Biden administration's failure to conduct oversight of government programs awarding improper payment, costing the federal government and American taxpayers billions of dollars every year. Improper payments have cost American taxpayers $281 billion alone in FY 2021. This is an increase from $108 billion in FY 2012. Just imagine if the federal government spent more time ensuring proper payments were being made. Our national debt would probably not be as high as it is today. It is imperative that the federal government be good stewards of taxpayer funds, as each improper payment further erodes the trust of the American people in the security of the federal government. While federal agencies were quick to deliver financial relief to American taxpayers when COVID hit, it is extremely important to note that many of these agencies did not have the safeguards in place to forestall improper payments. In fact, in FY 2020 and FY 2021, the government-wide improper payment rate rose from 5.6% to 7.2%, largely due to problems with COVID-related relief funds. For example, experts believe that millions of dollars of unemployment benefits went to bad actors, and there's proof of it. Just yesterday, a man in Rhode Island was indicted for using stolen identities of others to file for COVID-related unemployment benefits. Miss Miller, a question for you, ma'am. During his State of the Union address, President Biden acknowledged that fraud within the unemployment insurance program was egregious. What actions must the Biden administration immediately take to better investigate and to retrieve improperly received taxpayer funds distributed for pandemic unemployment insurance?
Well, I believe that there are a number of initiatives underway right now to do recovery. He obviously identified a federal prosecutor that would be in charge of COVID funding. There's also several law enforcement agencies. I worked at one of those oversight entities, the PRAC, which coordinates the work of several law enforcement agencies. There's a task force, a fraud task force that PRAC has created. The DOJ has multiple task forces, Secret Service, FBI. There are a variety of law enforcement agencies currently going after the fraud in the pandemic. The problem, there's not a limited number of oversight at this point. There's actually a limited number of people that can actually go back and do all of the investigative work that's going to be needed done to build cases to get prosecutions. But honestly, that is very little of that money is going to get recovered. Most of the pandemic spending was identity theft-based fraud. Identity theft, you're not going to recover that. Those guys are gone. They were not using identities that can be identified through a law enforcement investigation unless they can find a criminal ring, which is extremely challenging for them to find, so especially when they're offshore. So, I mean, I think, to me, I don't think there's a problem with a prosecutor, and I think it's great that we're going to try to claw back as much as we can. But going forward, I think the focus has to be on prevention and not so much on recovery.
Well, thank you, ma'am. So you think that pretty much what's out there that is gone already, and there's not much chance of getting it back?
I mean, I think some programs are more likely to recover more funding. PPP loans in particular are ones that are going to be more likely to get money back, but I think a lot of the unemployment assistance payments are going to be very difficult, if not impossible, to recover.
So therefore, we need to increase the safeguards on those programs right now, make them much more robust. All right, well, thank you. Question for Ms. Gressler. Do you believe the lack of safeguards implemented within the unemployment insurance program made these programs more vulnerable to bad actors, or if not, what do you think did make them more vulnerable?
Yes, I think it was absolutely that lack of safeguards and lack of any consequence when the payments went out the door. What I think is particularly troubling going forward is, yes, we have to address the existing improper payments within government programs already, but we're seeing from this administration proposals to make Americans dependent on the government, not just for things like unemployment insurance and Social Security, but for every part of their life, for childcare, for paid family leave, for pre-K. And so the bigger that the government grows, the more improper payments there are out there, but it's also not helpful for people. We've heard from Ms. Gilkinson, these programs are not easy to navigate. Who wants to go and fill out a bunch of paperwork and submit medical information to be able to receive paid family leave when we've seen in some of the states that have that? Washington State, for example, people were waiting weeks, if not months, when they weren't even able to apply until they had a need for leave, and so they didn't find out until months after they needed the money whether or not they were eligible for it. And so expanding government's reach into people's lives is not what empowers them. We need to look towards changing the nature of the programs that are out there and also towards not expanding them any further.
Thank you.
I would agree with that. Thank you very much. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank